Americans do not vote directly for their president. I'm not talking about a government conspiracy. I'm talking about the Electoral College, a system that has been around since the birth of our nation. What is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is not a building or institution. It's just the name given to a designated group of people who cast each state's official votes for president. This group is made up of 538 people. Each state has a different number of electors based on their representatives in Congress. So, states like California and Texas have more votes than states like North and South Dakota. The only exception? The District of Columbia, which has 3 electors despite not having any voting members in Congress. How does it work? Each party selects their own group of electors. Each state then empowers the electors who represent the candidate who won the most votes, except Nebraska and Maine, who award electors based on a combination of statewide results and districts won. The candidate who receives at least 270 Electoral College votes becomes the next president. What if there's a tie? If there is a tie, or if somebody doesn't get to 270, the House of Representatives appoints the president, and the Senate chooses the vice president. Why does this system exist? In short, the Electoral College was created as a compromise of several different proposals by the nation's founders. Critics say the system allows candidates to become president without necessarily securing a majority of voters' support, which happened in 2000. Advocates argue it ensures less populated states aren't completely ignored. How are these people selected? The electors are chosen by their political parties in each state. The only rule is that they cannot currently hold office. Can an elector ignore the popular vote? Yes. It's called a faithless elector, but it's rare and it has never affected the outcome of an election. Some states require formal pledges enforced by fines and possible jail time. But historically speaking, members rarely depart from the will of the people.
Campaigning, fundraising, debates, more fundraising, 2 conventions, more debates, and finally, the vote. The U.S. presidential election happens every 4 years on the first Tuesday in November, but Election Day is really just the last step in a years-long process. It starts with the primary, when states vote on who should be the nominee for each political party. There are 2 major political parties that most Americans identify with, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is considered to be on the right of the political spectrum, supporting positions considered more conservative, while the Democrats fall on the left, supporting positions considered more liberal. Every summer, before the election, the 2 parties hold week-long events called conventions to officially select their nominee. Each state will send delegates to the conventions who act as representatives of the results from the primary.
50 votes for Secretary Clinton and 9 votes for Senator Sanders.
The candidate who wins the majority of those delegates then accepts the nomination. Even the sitting president has to be re-nominated by their party.
Congratulations, Dad, we love you!
But if he or she has already served 2 terms, they can't run again. Once the nominees are secured, it's on to the general election. Although the nominees may attack each other as they campaign, they won't actually face off until the debates a month before the election. When it's finally time to vote, there are 3 ways to do it. By mail-in ballot for those who can't make it to the polls, by early voting, which happens days or weeks before Election Day, and by going to the polls on Election Day. Historically, only about 50 to 60% of eligible Americans actually turn out to vote. In the United States, the candidate with a majority of the votes doesn't automatically win. The U.S. uses a system called the Electoral College, which gives each state a certain amount of electoral votes. The amount of electoral votes a state gets is determined by how many representatives they have in Congress. If a candidate gets the most votes in a state, they get the electoral votes for that state, except in Nebraska and Maine, where they are awarded based on a statewide and district results. You need 270 out of 538 electoral votes to become president. Some states have historically voted Republican and are called red states. Others have historically voted Democratic and are called blue states. Some states are swing states, which means voters have swung between Democrats and Republicans depending on the election year. In a normal year, if the election is a landslide, the results could get called shortly after polling stations close in the evening.
Thank you.
But if it's close, candidates won't give their victory or concession speeches until the wee hours of the morning. If it's super close, candidates can request a recount in certain states. In 2000, George Bush won the state of Florida by just about 1,700 votes. After a recount, it was only 327, and ultimately, the Supreme Court had to weigh in to certify the results. Because of COVID-19, mail-in voting is expected to increase and states are facing challenges, like shortages of poll workers. It may take some states days or weeks to finalize their results. After all of that, the winner is sworn in the following January. And almost immediately, people start preparing for the next election.